And I'm looking, I see this $200,000 judgment. And I'm like, team, if I can negotiate this judgment and actually buy the judgment, this is where we got creative. I was able to get the seller like $300,000 cash out. And I was able to get myself a judgment that we purchased that had a face value of $212,000. I was able to buy that judgment for $101,000. So I'm going to give you an overview of the deal, and then we're going to go into what we did. It's a really simple process. Honestly, this podcast is not going to take a lot, but it goes like this. Gentlemen we were dealing with, and I just want to go back a second. With all of your sellers, you have to get into the who, the what, the where, the why, the how. You have to ask questions. We went over in a lot of the podcasts and in the training sessions on how to get people to know, like, and trust you, how to build rapport, how to ask open-ended questions, and really how to probe. So, like, you have to get good when somebody says something. You have to think, read between the lines, and listen to what they're saying, and ask additional follow-up questions to kind of peel back that onion to really find out what the hell was going on. With this guy, he had a great house, beautiful house. It's like a 4,000 square foot home, dated to shit, divorced, had a business that went upside down. The guy actually did some things he shouldn't have done, got himself in a jam years ago. He had a shit ton of judgments on the property. Now, he had judgments that could never get removed because these were from the federal government, not IRS. This was like, court identified on the property, big ones that were encumbering the property. He owed a small mortgage of like 30 grand. So not in foreclosure, not behind on his mortgage, not a short sale, but he had I think it was $950,000 for restitution because he did something they shouldn't have done, and they put this against the property. And then he had additional 2 other mortgages, small ones, and he had a $240,000 judgment and a couple of small judgments. The $240,000 judgment was from a law firm where he decided he wasn't going to pay his law bill, and they put a judgment against him, and it had interest and penalties and all this other shit. It started off at 100, it was up to like 212. So he thought initially when he came in that he wasn't going to be able to sell his house because of all the judgments that were on. He knew he had equity on the mortgage, but he knew that he had all these judgments. And he's like, look, if I could sell this house, I'll walk away with no money. I just don't want to take money out of my pocket to pay off these liens and judgments because I'm not dealing with it. I'd rather just let the property just sit there. If I come back, I'll rent it out, whatever. So I said, all right. The person in my office was actually Nicole. She brought it over to me, and I said, let me just get on the phone with this guy to dig a little deeper. So as I started digging deeper, I understood what his mortgages were on the property. I understood that the restitution loan was because he did something he shouldn't have done, got in trouble with the courts, and they stacked this huge fine on him that is not negotiable. Like, they will not negotiate the judgment down, but they will negotiate the judgment. This is what we did. And then I looked at these other judgments that I'm like, he has like $260,000 in judgment. So overall, this guy, he would have had to come out with like a couple $100,000 out of his pocket. So I said to him, look, if we could get this deal done with you coming out with zero, would you sell the property to us? And he goes, of course. I said that to you over the phone. I'm like, all right, let me get some stuff done here. So what I did is I made this a win for him and a win for us. I first negotiated with my team negotiated with the big judgments, right? The ones that were restitution. We went to them and said, look, here's the purchase and sale. Here's the documents that we have. This guy needs to sell his property. He wants to just pay you a certain amount. He's going to pay you like $50,000 as good faith, and he'll continue to make payments over time. It's like a few $1,000s a month. The guy said he would do that if the bank would, if the courts would allow it. Court said yes. Went to the other judgments, the smaller judgments, got them to just take a few pennies on the dollar. And then I'm looking, I see this $200,000 judgment. And I'm like, team, if I can negotiate this judgment and actually buy the judgment, this is where we got creative. I was able to get the seller like $300,000 cash out, and I was able to get myself a judgment that we purchased that had a face value of $212,000. I was able to buy that judgment for $101,000. So I just created, in essence, this is called for round numbers, $100,000 in value by buying that judgment for 100, had a face value for 212. Let's just call it 100 and 200 just for simple numbers. And so When we got to the closing table, I actually purchased, I called the law firm. I did this myself, called them, said, look, I'm interested in buying this judgment you have. Would you sell it at 10 cents on the dollar? 20 grand. They laughed. And they said the lowest we'll go is 100. Good. Draw the paperwork up. Let's get the paperwork over to the attorneys. It took them 2 weeks because the attorneys we deal with out here never did a deal like this before. So I had to explain to them how it was done in the other states, give them the paperwork, showed them how to do this. We actually did a judgment purchase at the closing table. They assigned the judgment over to me. We recorded it. So now this other company owns the judgment. The seller got his, I think, $250,000 or $300,000 cash out. The restitution got 50 grand to them, plus they're getting payments on a monthly basis over the next 30 or 40 years, whatever we negotiated. The small judgments got paid off into discount. I got a judgment that was face value of 212. I got the 212 on the HUD. I paid 100, so I walked out of there with like $104,000 at the closing because I was able to identify a problem, a judgment that was on the head. The guy never filed bankruptcy, was able to take that judgment, turn around. Now, if I would have bought that judgment and the seller didn't have a benefit, it would have been a shitty deal for him.